Her 6-year-old girl is gone. Mommy, on the other hand, hysterical. We learned child services in the home just before Isabel disappears. And has Daddy lawyered up? Bombshell tonight. A blood-like substance found in Isabel's bedroom. Repeat. A blood-like substance found on the floor of the 6-year-old's room. Similar stains, we learned tonight, also found on a white shower curtain stuffed inside that family car. Luminol testing done throughout, and tonight another clue. A man's Wolverine brand boot prints discovered behind the home tonight. Is there finally a crack in the case of missing 6-year-old Isabel?
Just please, please, to the person or persons who have Isabel.
Just hearing about this for the first time.
Apparent blood on the floor.
Tell us your demands.
My husband, I went to work this morning at 7, and I didn't even check on her, so I'm going to check on her.
Tell us what you want.
Hello, I need to report a missing child. I believe she was abducted from a house.
This new theory that somebody staying at the house may have owed somebody money and that the little girl was taken as a ransom.
Reported footprints on a utility box behind the home.
Can you tell us how much money might be available if ransom ever had to be paid, just hypothetically?
Not out of us.
Out of us.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nowhere in the documents, however, is there a mention of a ransom or any notes found inside.
Window out, I can't see anything else, and the door's locked to outside, so they had to have jumped over the fence, or I don't know what they did, but oh my God.
If you know how we're supposed to be acting, please let us know.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. I want to thank you for being with us. Bombshell tonight. A blood-like substance found in Isabel's bedroom. Repeat, found on the floor of the 6-year-old bedroom. We are just learning that tonight. Similar stains also found on a white shower curtain stuffed inside the family car. Luminol testing done throughout, and tonight another clue. A man's Wolverine brand boot print discovered behind the home. Is there a crack in the case? Where is 6-year-old Isabel? We are taking your call straight out to ABC News correspondent Neil Karlinski. Neil, thank you for being with us. What can you tell us about, first of all, I'm not crazy about the boot print. That could be anybody, anytime. I'm concerned about the blood-like substance found in her bedroom and what was on that white shower curtain, and why was the shower curtain in the car?
Well, a lot of good questions. I mean, we have 550 pages of police documents that are released with all kinds of information, some of it relevant, some of it likely not. But of course, the standouts do include what is described in the documents as photographs of a blood-like stain in a middle bedroom on the east side of the house. We know from witnesses, also from blueprints that we've obtained of the house, that was Isabel Celis' bedroom, the one where there is the blood-like substance. Now, what we don't know is what the lab analysis told police, if in fact it's come back yet, about what exactly that was. We do know they took DNA from all of the relatives. They took a toothbrush and a hairbrush from Isabel to make a comparison. Is there a match? That is something that is not revealed.
We also learned that there was, in fact, Neil Karlinski, writing in her bedroom closet. We learned that, too.
Police scour this house inch by inch. The writing on a bedroom closet, we have no reference point of that. Is that something a little girl writes on her wall or something more? There's no indications of a ransom note or of anything like that.
Neil?
Yes.
Did your parents let you write on the wall?
I can't speak for how other people raise their children. I'm the father of a 6-year-old. She does some things I don't like her to do also.
Well, long story short, we learned that some type of message had been scrawled on the inside of the wall of Isabel's closet. We are also learning a blood-like substance found on the floor of her room. And based on everything we know, based on the exterior of the home and the blueprint that we obtained, that is her bedroom. What can you tell me? Neil Karlinski joining us tonight, everyone, ABC News correspondent. regarding a white shower curtain in that family car, the red car that was parked in the driveway, the car that wouldn't crank up, that nobody would use. That was parked in the driveway. We have video, pull it, Liz, of police removing fabric and pillows from the car. Tonight we learned that fabric is a white shower curtain with similar stains on it, blood-like stains on it.
Yeah, this is very curious. I was there right after the disappearance for more than a week, and we watched police just tearing apart that red car, just going through it methodically, day after day. Now we know from these documents they did in fact find what they describe as a white hat and also a shower curtain inside with a brown or reddish-brown substance on it. Of course, that leads you to be curious as to whether that's blood. They say that it wasn't field tested. Again, we don't know what the lab results were on that. But as you mentioned, we have been told by police sources that red car never left the house. It was actually parked off to the side of the driveway, sort of adjacent, and we're told it didn't run.
Well, I want to go to Dr. Bill Lloyd, board-certified surgeon and pathologist. Dr. Lloyd, thank you for being with us. We know that that white shower curtain was stuffed into the car, okay? All this occurred, Isabel's disappearance occurred between 11 p.m. that night and 8 a.m. when her father discovers she's gone. To our knowledge, no one left the home during the night. If the shower curtain was removed from the home that night, where else would there be to stuff it? The trash or a car that doesn't work, that nobody will think to look in? The mom wouldn't look in it. The dad wouldn't look in it. So if you have this shower curtain, it can be stuffed in that car. No one would think to look there for a period of time because the car didn't work. So why was the shower curtain stuffed in the car? But my question to you, Dr. Lloyd, is this. Police chose at that moment not to field test the shower curtain. But there's a reason for that. Their reasoning, Dr. Lloyd, I want your thoughts on this, is that they wanted that shower curtain in as close to the condition they found it as when the lab got it. They didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to handle it. They didn't want to destroy any evidence. They saw it. They seized it. They sent it to the crime lab. Was that a mistake, or would you agree with their decision, Dr. Lloyd?
No, that's standard protocol, Nancy. They want a very contained environment when they unravel and open up that shower curtain. It'll be just as important to retrieve fingerprints as it will be to test whatever substance is on the shower curtain. That takes time. It takes a controlled environment. They don't want anybody else's fingerprints on that shower curtain as well. Once the fingerprints are captured, then they can go about and testing the stains. Take small samples and reconstitute them to identify, is this blood? And then test for blood antigens to identify whose blood it is. And remember, Nancy, I bet you that car was locked. Whoever put that shower curtain in the car had to have a key.
You know what, Dr. Lloyd? I just wrote the question, who had access to the car? Because that car was always parked there. I confirmed that with the backstore neighbor, and she told me that car had never been moved in all the time she had lived there. To my understanding, it didn't work or it didn't crank. I'm sure it was locked. The reality is, whoever stuffed that in there had a key.
On the shower curtain, testing for blood residue, you need a dark environment. Nancy, you can only do it once. You can only test for luminol once, then the reaction is over. So you have to be ready to view it in the dark and to have your photographic apparatus all set up. Again, a controlled environment is the best way to capture solid evidence.
Apparently, Dr. Lloyd, when they saw it, they recognized a similar stain on the shower curtain than what they saw in the floor in Isabel's bedroom. And we've been told that was a blood-like substance on the floor of her bedroom. They could, I think, have taken a scratch of it for a field test, but why bother? I agree. And if you see that video again, Liz, please, they all have on their latex gloves. They're not leaving fingerprints. God help him. So they wouldn't have been contaminated in that way. Everybody, we are taking your calls to Alexis Tereszchuk, senior reporter, RadarOnline.com. What more do we know, Alexis?
You know, Nancy, there was even more potential blood evidence found in another car. They found a small spot of apparent blood on the front seat of the car. This is another, so that's 3 examples of potential blood that they found in Isabel's residence.
You know, and I've got a problem with that car, Ellie Josta, because I don't understand. There's 2 cars in play here.
Right.
The car, the red, I think, is an Acura Integra, old model, right there, parked in front of, beside the home. It's always there. I think it doesn't crank. That's where they got a shower curtain, a hat, which many people believe to be a shower cap. I'm going to go back to Karlinski on that in just a moment. But then there's another car, Ellie, that they say they did luminol tests on. What is that? Where does that car fit into the scenario?
Well, that's the other car that's involved here. It is a Toyota Corolla. Apparently, they did a luminol test, and there was a stain in there that had a positive reaction to the luminol when it was examined under an ultraviolet light. We don't know, though, whose car that is or where the car was in relation to the house.
Neil Karlinski, ABC News correspondent, is joining us right now from the field. Neil, what do we know about this second car in which they did a luminol test with a positive result?
So there's two cars. There's the red car you're talking about. That just sits on the side of the house.
Right.
It does not go anywhere. There is the car in the garage. We're told that's the Toyota Corolla the family apparently drives. And the luminol test, the positive result for blood was on the driver's seat. The driver's seat. I think that's critical. I want to make one other point, Nancy, about the blood found in Isabel's bedroom, or what appears to be blood. If you remember back early on in this case, police were wrapping up their search of the house. They were going to give it back to the family. Then they came out and told reporters that some of the new dogs that were brought out by the FBI lab in Quantico hit on something in her bedroom. And that led them to search her house further for another 24 hours. It looks like possibly that could be the stain they're now talking about in these documents.
At this hour, the search is on for 6-year-old Isabel. And tonight, blockbuster evidence that we have just obtained, including blood evidence, possible blood evidence, and also boot print evidence. Police have narrowed it down to what they believe Wolverine brand boot prints behind the backyard. Let's see a mock-up of the Wolverine boot print, please, or of the Wolverine boot. And also take a look at those shoes being worn by Dad Sergio Celis. What does that look like to you, Jason Oceans?
Looks like Wolverine boot print right there. So, you know, as you're looking at that, you certainly give pause. You've got a lot of evidence working here against Mr. Celis for the moment, and it seems to be mounting. But the point we must remain is that police have got to be fair. They've invested a lot of money on this.
Another issue is a lot of boots can look like a Wolverine. You have to make a test inside of a lab to match up any boot print. We don't know whose boot print that was, and even if it was Sergio Celis' boot print, he has a right to be in his backyard, people. A neighbor said they think this was some kind of retribution for money owed by a relative living in the home. Now, we know of a cousin living in the home. Ellie, was it a cousin or the brother of Sergio Celis?
It was a cousin, and I believe it is actually on Becky Celis' side of the family. Okay,
unleash the lawyers. Eleanor Odom, death penalty qualified prosecutor. Karen Conti, defense attorney, Chicago. Jason Oceans, defense attorney in New York. Eleanor, all this business about it was for a debt or a drug debt, BS. That only happens in the movies. And number two, if it was, where's the ransom? Where's the ransom request?
Exactly, Nancy. That's just sort of a bogus theory that's going out there. People take children, and I hate to say it, but they only take them for one reason, Nancy, to sexually abuse them. Because why else are you going to take a small child? There's no note, there's no nothing. And this is what is so frightening about these cases. It's abuse and often murder.
Jason Oceans?
No, Eleanor is right on target. I mean, there's no other way. Ransoms are from the movies. I mean, that's the only place that they sit well. It doesn't occur in modern times. It's for sexual purposes, and that's the unfortunateness of this abduction.
Karen Conti?
It looks to me like they're just trying to divert attention. We didn't do anything. It's the guy who's owed money. So I agree with the other lawyers.
To you, Karen Stark, the reality is, I mean, think back on all the cases you've covered and analyzed. How often do you really see anyone kidnapped for money? A legitimate ransom case or payback. I mean, this is not a Colombian drug lord case, okay? He worked out as a dental assistant.
That's the whole point, Nancy. It would make a lot more sense if this was a very wealthy family. So, no, we see kidnapping so that people can take the child and abuse the child, sometimes turn them into a slave, as we've seen in some cases, but not for money. It doesn't make any sense at all.
any marks, scars? Other than the window out, I can't see anything else. And the door's locked to outside, so they had to have jumped over the fence.
You can see that it would be quite simple for someone to get over this wall directly to Isabel's bedroom window.
Straight out to Neil Karlinski, ABC News correspondent. Neil, what can you tell me about these footprints the police say are Wolverine brand boot prints?
Apparently they were on a utility box behind the house. Now, as you know, there's a wall that goes all the way around the house, and depending on where in the house you are, the wall is actually higher or lower because the ground is at different heights. You know, it's a working class neighborhood. That boot, as you said, it could belong to anyone. I'm sure police are analyzing that, but that back side of the house where they found the boot prints is also an alleyway. That's where all the garbage was, and there was a lot of traffic going through there.
Hey, take a look at your monitor if you can, Neil. We've got Greg Overzet, our producer, who just stood up on the very box they're talking about. Neil, were any of these boot prints found in between the house and the wall? Because right now I'm understanding boot prints on that box, which looks over the fence. It's on the other side of the wall away from the home.
Well, I can't see the monitor that you have, but they did find other prints, and dogs certainly tracked to a house on the other side. But, you know, the police were scouring every house in this neighborhood. I mean, you had a high-level sex offender 5 doors down to the right as you walk out of the Celis store, 17 within a 3-square-mile area. We watched police interview and re-interview and go through homes all throughout there. In some of these documents, they talk about finding substances in the homes that they want to test and see if they're blood or not, but it's all incredibly random, and without the lab analysis, we don't know what they found.
To Gene Casares, legal correspondent in session, joining us from the field. Gene, what do you know?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that Isabel Celis, who we thought was the last one to have seen his daughter, said to investigators that he fell asleep on the couch, went to his bedroom at 5 a.m. in the morning, and did not check on Isabel.
Repeat, Jane?
That he fell asleep on the sofa, watching, we believe, the Diamondbacks baseball game rerun, woke up at 5 a.m., went to his bedroom, did not check on his daughter. So when was the last time Isabel was even seen by a family member? 10:30 at night?
You know what? You're right, Jane. And Jane, what is your understanding as to where these Wolverine brand boot prints are found?
On the utility meter box, and a meter box we saw is outside the property, and then there are some footprints about 5 feet away, and a meter box could be used to get up and over. So that is true. But here's what I'm still concerned about.
On the other side of the wall, Jane?
And that's a question, and I think that's an important question. Were those boot prints on the other side of the wall? Were they found there?
What do you want?
New evidence police have revealed from inside her own home.
The room with the apparent blood, according to a blueprint of the house, is the missing 6-year-old's.
Is Mom there also?
She had just left for work. I just called her and I told her to get her butt home.
That is Sergio. That is him being calm because his 10-year-old son is right there when he's making the call.
From early on, very early on, there's been talk of ransom.
If there were demands, please let us know something. Let us know something. Why is this happening? What is the reason behind it?
And there you hear the only reference about demands made by Sergio Celis, the father. Out to Neil Karlinski, ABC News correspondent. Is that where all this is coming from, this line of investigation regarding a ransom demand? Because Sergio Celis, in the public statement he made, refers to what are your demands?
It's unclear. It's interesting. I was standing right in front of him when he said that, and a lot of people were finding that curious. It's something, as you mentioned earlier, you hear more about in television shows and the movies, and we were wondering where that came from. In the police reports, we know that the report of someone in the house owing money, and that's what this is all about, according to the report, that comes from a witness, not a family member, in his statement to police. We don't know the veracity of it, of course.
What can you tell us, Neil Karlinski, about the dogs that searched the various homes?
This is interesting because we spoke when I was there to the next-door neighbor who lives in a bedroom that is immediately just a few feet across from Isabel Celis' bedroom. She told us, she tells police in the reports we now have, that at 6:30 a.m. she was woken up by dogs barking loud, going crazy, she said. And we know that's her dog and also dogs in the Celis home. more than one they had that barked routinely. She also heard men's voices. There are other reports of dogs barking. Sergio, however, talks about waking up on the couch at 5 a.m., walking back to bed, not waking up till after 7, and he says he didn't hear a thing. He didn't hear any dogs.
You know what? We spoke to her, and she confirms what you're saying. And your point is...
Well, why would he have not heard dogs? It seems to be an odd mismatch there between someone who's right next door and other neighbors and someone who is inside the house and who even concedes to police that his dogs bark at the drop of a hat.
You're right, Neil. With me, ABC News correspondent Neil Karlinski. Out to the line, Susan, Missouri. Hi, Susan. What's your question?
I was just wondering if they ever said what was written inside of the closet.
No, they have not, Susan. We are still trying to find out. Out to Wendy in Ohio. Hi, Wendy. What's your question?
Hi, my question. Well, the blood was found inside the house. That's just kind of surprising that nobody would actually hear, like, you know, a child being hurt, you know. So, like, you know, I'm just wondering if it's not the family or somebody that was actually in the house when this, you know, that night.
Good question. You know, I want to go to Bill Lloyd on that, but I want to quickly follow up on the blood. The blood-like evidence found in the home with renowned professor of forensic science out of University of New Haven. With us tonight, Dr. Henry Lee. Henry, thank you so much for being with us.
Most welcome.
Dr. Lee, what do you make of the police decision not to field test the blood-like substance found on the shower curtain stuffed in the family car?
Okay, it's pretty simple, Nancy. Basically here must be a small amount of blood. Miniature amount of blood, usually we make a decision. If we do the field test, you're going to exhaust it, used up all the sample. That will prohibit your future to do DNA. More likely to collect the whole item, and the amount of sample must be very small because it took them almost a month to find out that's blood. Now the next thing is this a human blood. If it's a human blood, we have to do some DNA. Is that her blood or somebody else? Also, we have to look at the blood. Is this the loaded or original whole blood? It's the loaded means maybe washed. And of course, we look at the pattern. Is that an impact spatter pattern or a blood dripping or a transfer pattern? So very important thing they have to do. There, of course, if you found that even say that's her blood, is this is a casual contact of transfer on the surface quite a while ago or very recent. Just like you mentioned the shoe print, that's not really a footprint, that's a shoe print. And shoe print we have to know that's two-dimensional, three-dimensional. It's an indentation or a flat print. Of course, we can look at the size and look at the width and determine more likely the individual's height and the weight, and of course trace the brand name of this shoe print and determine what type of boots. Because so many different work boots, now we have a database on all the work boot being print that's easily can track down.
To Dr. Bill Lloyd, I want to go back to Wendy in Ohio's question. Dr. Lloyd, she asked if there had been a death or injury resulting in blood being spent onto the floor of Isabel's room, why wouldn't anyone in the home hear it, Dr. Lloyd?
Well, that's the great mystery, Nancy. There are stories about dogs barking like crazy in the middle of the night. Dad sleeping on a sofa just a few feet away from her. There are so many of these puzzle pieces that don't fit together.
But wouldn't you agree there are ways for blood to be spent without noise?
Well, certainly. If you've got someone silenced with a hand over the mouth, etc., and you're injuring them enough to draw blood, you know, it's possible. If they were unconscious or drugged, it would also be possible as well. It will also be possible to date how long that blood has been there. Was it blood from perhaps a previous abuse event? Or was it the current event that we're talking about that led to the disappearance of this poor girl?
To Mark Klass, president and founder of Klass Kids Foundation. Mark, what do all these developments mean to you?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, the police might very well have told Sergio and Becky to be aware of the fact that somebody might call in with some kind of ransom demands. They certainly did that in our case. Secondly, I have said this many times, Paulie's mother slept through the entire kidnapping incident, and she was mere feet away from Paulie's bedroom at the time. So I think that these are things that need to be dealt with. But there's something I have to say here, Nancy. Today is National Missing Children's Day, and it's National Missing Children's Day for a specific reason. President Ronald Reagan felt that child safety should be a national priority, and that was based upon the kidnapping of Eitan Patch, which happened exactly 33 years ago today. And I've heard more than once through this investigation, even today, somebody bringing up the cost of this investigation, that the police have spent so much money looking for this little girl. I never hear that in any other kind of crime, the reference to the kind of money that's being spent. And I'm absolutely insulted that anybody, whether it's a cop or a reporter or anybody else, would start making this connection between the amount of money that's been spent on this investigation and the fact that this little girl is missing. Their job, the police's job, is to find and secure and keep us safe. It's not to be bookkeeping, and I think anybody who's following the dollars and cents in this case has their priorities very mixed up.
You know what, Mark Klass? I heard the same thing, and my response was equal to yours. The reality is if I'm paying half my money to taxes, I'm happy that it's being spent to try to find Isabel, as opposed to paying some fat cat laid up, kicked back on Capitol Hill, spending my money, all right? So they're going to take our money whether we like it or not. And don't get me wrong, RS, I'm okay with it. But what I'm saying is, good, spend it to find Isabel Celis. That's how I feel about it, Mark, and I'm pretty sure you agree with me. I want to go back to Gene Casares, legal correspondent in session, joining us from the field right now. So many developments. What do we know about luminol tests in a red Toyota? We now learn there's the car parked in the driveway, which is the Acura Integra, and then the other car where luminol results were positive parked in the garage.
You know, there's so much, Nancy, we learned from the beginning that now we can put together with some of the information from the reports. The red car that had the smashed-in windshield that doesn't move, it tested positive with luminol in the driver's seat area. And we also know that pillows and a blanket were taken out of that vehicle.
Alicia lawyers, Eleanor Odom, Kieran Conti, Jason Oceans. Eleanor Odom, what now?
Well, Nancy, what they're looking at now are the people closest to Isabel. That's nothing to get upset about. That is normal in these cases. Just like a ransom note is kind of TV stuff, so is a stranger coming in and abducting. I mean, the odds are against that. It happens, don't get me wrong, as we've seen with Paulie Klaas and others. But that's why they look at the inner circle first, and that's what they're focusing on.
Jason?
I don't disagree with Eleanor, but by the same token, we're not going to just expediently go move against the father.
Nobody said that, Oceans.
But it sort of looks like that from how we're scoping. I understand that, and we're determined.
Your theories about what may or may not come in evidence.
Nancy,
we're not in a courtroom right now. You're sitting in a TV studio.
I understand.
And we can talk about the facts. There's nobody here to suppress the evidence, Jason Oceans, so don't start.
We're not suppressing anything. We're trying to be as broad as we can be and not narrow our focus to just the father.
Conti?
Well, I think we need to look at what the Department of the Family Service Department is doing. They're keeping the father away from those boys. Why are they doing that, Nancy? And I think they're doing that because the father might be trying to poison those boys into not talking and telling the truth.
I want to report a missing person, my little girl. I believe she was abducted.
I got woken up by my dogs. They were barking their heads off. Their dogs were just going crazy.
Child Protective Services banned Sergio from having contact with his children.
We are cooperating to the fullest extent.
We will not stop looking for you.
We are live and taking your calls out to Lori in West Virginia. Hi, Lori. What's your question?
Did the parents ever say anything about the polygraph test?
Oh, Lori in West Virginia. You know, you really cranked me up on that one. No, they did not. And they have asked point blank. They've been asked point blank, pull the sound, Liz. You know, to Susan Constantine, body language expert, you have observed them over and over and over and analyzed them for us. Have you noticed how the mom, a lot of times when they're asked a question, they're always sitting together. She typically will have her arm over his arm.
Yes.
A lot of times when they ask a question, she looks up at him as if you take it, or she's looking to him for guidance. I'm an amateur. What does that really mean?
Well, she's looking, you know, to see his response. And the other thing is that you'll notice that you're right, that his hand is underneath hers. She is actually more in a dominant role. But when you see when he's getting ready to sit down, he sits down very slowly. His movements are very slow and kind of sheepish. So what I'm looking at here is when she's looking...
Go ahead.
Okay, when she's looking at her husband, or he's looking at his wife, he's actually looking at her response to see how he's going to respond.
To Mark Harold, former APD author of Observations of White Noise, what do you think about the developments, Mark?
Well, I don't think the boot print's much of anything. It doesn't tell us a whole lot. I think the idea that this is about ransom, I agree. I think you've got to look, just like everyone has said, even if you don't like to say it, you got to look at the people in the house, the people closest to this victim, and go from there. I think at this point they're trying to use the physical evidence to exclude people and then try to focus in on someone. But I don't think they have anyone that they're really focusing in on yet. They're waiting for the lab results.
You know, back to you. With us, renowned professor of forensic science, Dr. Henry Lee. Dr. Henry Lee, I hate to bring up bad memories of that double murderer that you helped get acquitted, Orenthal James Simpson, but let's talk about footprints again, the Bruno Malley footprints.
Right.
How
Except,
do you... Go ahead, sir.
Nancy, you remember we found two type of shoe print. One is Bruno Malley. The second one, the Bruno Malley is 14, size of 14, and a second type of bloody shoe print, which is parallel line, size 10, which clearly tell us could be two individuals.
Ooh, and I think I know who one of them is. Well, how are we going to get footprints in this case?
This case, we should look at that shoe print near the wall, whether or not we can find similar shoe print inside the house or next neighbors or any so-called linkage theory. You can link together. Then, of course, the luminol, which you just mentioned, it's on the front seat. We don't know it's in the back or the seat how big it is. If still have enough DNA, then we should link that.
Well, luminol shows a host of substances. It doesn't have to be blood, does it?
Definitely, you're smart, and definitely. But however, in the car seat, unless somebody used detergent or peroxidase to clean up the car, and so that's by itself, it's become important. So a lot of physical evidence we have to look at. Last time we talked about it, or when you ask the question, I said trace evidence could be the key of this case. Any hairs, any dust particle or pollen particle can give us clue.
With us, Dr. Henry Lee, and very quickly, CNN Heroes.
Sure.
Odom, Karen Conti, Jason Oceans, and also Karen Stark. Let's go crazy and try a $4, New York Control Room. Okay, Eleanor Odom, have you ever tried a footprint case? Because, you know, I know it's been done, but, you know, that print could have been left by anybody.
Well, it can, and believe it or not, Nancy, I have tried one that had a footprint in it, but what we also had was other evidence. So that was just one piece of the puzzle, and that makes it great.
Oceans?
Only to disprove. Prosecutor produced it, and we were able to segment it out. It really had nothing to do with it.
You were able to segment it out. Did you get an acquittal?
The shoe, we did get an acquittal.
What's the name of the case?
I don't want to discuss it publicly.
Yeah, you can't remember because it didn't happen.
It's too old, Nancy. Like
Karen
me.
Conti?
I'm not finding that juries always buy that footprint evidence, you know, one way or the other, because it can be manipulated. So, again, I believe that there has to be other evidence with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Karen Stark, that could even be behavioral evidence.
And when we look at this father in particular, Nancy, he's not allowed to visit his sons. There's a past history. He doesn't make sense even when he's asking for, you know, what are your demands? There are things that are confusing to me about him.
Well, another thing is, you know, if they pass the polygraph, then put it out there? How's that going to hurt the investigation? Back to Wendy's question. And if you failed it, then there's a problem. So those are the two choices in that answer.
And if they passed it, they would have it out there.
You're right, Karen Stark. Everyone, let's stop.